Desire is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. We often treat it as a weakness, something dangerous, something to suppress. We hear people say, "Kill your desires if you want peace," or "Detach from all wanting, and you will find freedom." Yet, desire is not the enemy. It is the raw material of your becoming. It is energy like fire. If it burns without direction, it destroys, but when guided, it lights the path forward, warms the heart, and fuels the engine of creation. The question is not whether you have desire. You do. The real question is, what will you do with it? Will you let it consume you blindly, or will you transform it into a source of power, discipline, and destiny? Let us explore how to turn desire from a restless craving into a force that builds your life. Desire is not your weakness, nor is it a curse that you must rid yourself of to become pure or enlightened. Desire is the very spark of life itself, the current that animates the human spirit. It is the whisper of the unconscious, calling us toward a greater unfolding of who we are meant to become. Yet so often, we treat desire as though it were shameful, as though to want something deeply makes us selfish or broken. We silence it, suppress it, bury it under layers of guilt and fear. But in truth, desire is not a weight to carry. It is a signal, a voice that tells us where the energy of our lives is seeking to move. Think of a river. When the river flows wild and uncontained, it floods the land, sweeps away homes, drowns fields, and leaves behind ruin. But when the same water is guided, when it is channeled, it turns the wheels of turbines, lights entire cities, and feeds the roots of civilizations. The river itself is neither good nor evil. It is power. It is only the way we engage with it that determines whether it destroys or sustains. Desire is that river within you. If you let it flow without direction, it will carry you into chaos, addiction, and endless craving. But if you listen to it, guide it, and shape it, desire becomes the very force that allows you to create, to achieve, and to transform. Too often we are taught to distrust our longing. From childhood, we are told not to want too much, not to reach too high, not to dream too boldly. We are taught that contentment lies in silence, in suppressing the ache of more. Yet history itself is the testimony of desire made real. Without it, nothing would have been built, nothing discovered, nothing transformed. The Wright brothers did not invent flight by accident. They were possessed by a burning desire to lift the human spirit into the skies. They failed again and again, yet their desire kept them rising after every crash. That desire became the miracle of airplanes, reshaping the very way humanity connects and travels. Marie Curie did not stumble upon her discoveries as a passive observer of life. She desired to know the unseen forces of the world, to touch what others could not perceive. That deep longing drove her into years of painstaking research, endless nights of study, and a willingness to risk her own health for knowledge. Her desire uncovered the mysteries of radioactivity and forever changed the way we understand the universe. Behind every invention, every work of art, every step forward in human history lies the heartbeat of desire. It is not a weakness, it is the seed of creation. And yet, how often do we scold ourselves for wanting more? You long for love, and you call yourself needy. You long for wealth, and you call yourself greedy. You long for recognition, and you whisper that you are vain. But these longings are not stains on your character. They are signals. They are the compass pointing you toward the path of your becoming. To suppress them is to silence the very voice of your soul. Of course, desire can deceive when it is shallow, when it is borrowed from the world rather than born within. The desire to impress, to imitate, to escape, These are reflections of a restless culture, not the truth of your spirit. But the deeper desires, the ones that do not leave you even after years have passed, the ones that wake you in the night and whisper in your bones, those are not burdens. They are the energy that has been entrusted to you, waiting for you to bring it into form. Imagine the artist who feels a stirring within, the vision of a painting, a melody, or a poem that refuses to be silenced. If they ignore it, they become restless, haunted, consumed by frustration. But if they surrender to it, if they pick up the brush or the instrument, that desire flows into creation, and what once burned within is now alive in the world. The same is true for the entrepreneur who dreams of building something new, the teacher who longs to shape young minds, the parent who yearns to nurture a child with love and protection. Desire is the hidden fire beneath each of these roles. Do not mistake desire for emptiness. It is not a hole to be filled, but a light to be followed. It shows you where your soul still wants to grow, where your life still wants to expand. You feel the ache for love not because you are broken, but because you are built for connection. You feel the hunger for meaning not because you are lost, but because your life is meant to be more than routine survival. You feel the drive for recognition not because you are shallow, but because your gifts are seeking to be witnessed by the world. The question is not whether you desire, for everyone does. The question is whether you will see your desire as an enemy to fight or as a companion to guide. If you push it down, it will erupt in destructive ways, showing up as envy, obsession, or addiction. But if you embrace it, if you sit with it, ask it what it wants to teach you, it will reveal the direction of your hidden energy. There is a story of a young man who felt trapped in his ordinary life, working long hours in a job he despised. He felt guilty for wanting more, telling himself he should simply be grateful. Yet his desire did not leave him, it grew louder. He longed to write, to create stories that would inspire others. For years he ignored it, until the weight of his own repression nearly broke him. Finally, he surrendered. He wrote in the evenings after work, in the quiet hours when others slept. Over time, his words began to take shape, and eventually they found their way into the world. What once felt like a shameful craving became the source of his fulfillment and the gift he offered to others. This is what desire asks of us, to listen, not to blindly obey every impulse, but to recognize that within our deepest longings lies the map of our becoming. To feel desire is to feel alive, for without it there is no movement, no creation, no transformation. So, do not fear your desires. Do not call them weakness or sin. Look deeper, and you will see that they are currents of energy flowing within you, waiting to be guided. They are the river, powerful and untamed, asking for your hand to give them shape. If you dare to listen, to follow, to transform them into creation, you will find that your desires were never your enemy at all. They were always the voice of life itself, calling you toward the fullness of who you are meant to be. Uncontrolled desire is like a fire that burns wildly through a forest, devouring everything in its path, but leaving nothing of value behind. It consumes energy, it consumes time, and it consumes the very soul of the one who chases it without aim. But when desire is given structure, when it is trained, when it is refined by discipline, it becomes something far greater. It becomes power, power not in the sense of dominance over others, but in the sense of mastery over oneself, the rarest and highest form of power a human being can ever achieve. Think of the Olympic athlete who rises each morning before the sun, their breath still heavy with exhaustion, their body aching from the previous day's training. While the world sleeps, they push through the pain, through the monotony, through the moments where giving up would be easier than continuing. Why do they do this? Because their desire alone would never be enough. Desire would have whispered to them about glory, about medals, about victory. But it is discipline that makes those visions real. The union of raw desire and relentless discipline transforms the impossible into the inevitable. Desire is the spark, but discipline is the hand that shapes it into flame. Without discipline, desire scatters itself in countless directions. One moment you want success, the next you crave comfort. One day you dream of building something lasting, the next you spend hours distracted by fleeting pleasures. This scattering of energy is why so many people live in frustration, yearning for greatness, but never tasting it. They are full of desire but empty of discipline, and so their energy burns out in fragments, never focused enough to create anything lasting. Consider sunlight. When it pours across the earth, it warms, it nurtures, it gives life. But when gathered through the lens of a magnifying glass, that same gentle sunlight becomes a concentrated force capable of igniting fire. The light did not change, it was simply focused. This is what discipline does to desire. It takes the scattered rays of longing that fall in every direction and gathers them into a beam so sharp, so precise, that it sets the world aflame with creation. In our time, distraction has become the greatest thief of discipline. We live in an age of constant temptations, screens glowing with endless entertainment, voices telling us to take the easier path, comforts that promise satisfaction without effort. And so, desire is constantly scattered, a new goal today, a different craving tomorrow, 1,000 directions pulling us apart. The result is exhaustion without progress, movement without meaning. Without discipline, we run in circles. But discipline gives birth to depth. It says no to the 1,000 fleeting desires, so that it can say yes to the one that matters most. It teaches us to endure boredom, to embrace repetition, to see value in the slow and steady building of something great. It strips away the illusion that success is born in sudden inspiration or lucky breaks, reminding us instead that all true achievement is forged in the crucible of consistent effort. Think of the writer who longs to create a masterpiece. Desire will carry them to the page once or twice, perhaps even through a chapter or two. But without discipline, their work will remain unfinished, scattered across notebooks, abandoned at the first sign of difficulty. It is discipline that compels them to sit at the desk each morning, to write even when inspiration has fled, to wrestle with words until the story finally takes shape. What the world later celebrates as brilliance is often nothing more than desire transformed into power through the discipline of persistence. Or imagine the musician who dreams of playing before thousands. Desire fills their head with visions of applause, of standing ovations, of artistry admired. But desire alone will not steady the hand on the violin or strengthen the lungs to sustain a note. It is discipline, the daily hours of practice, the refusal to quit when the sound is flawed, the humility to repeat a passage until perfection emerges, that turns desire into the power of true mastery. We must ask ourselves, where in our lives are we scattering our energy? How many projects have been started but never finished? How many dreams have flickered brightly for a season, only to be abandoned when the effort became uncomfortable? Each unfinished work, each abandoned vision is not the failure of desire, it is the absence of discipline. Yet discipline is not something cold or joyless, it is not punishment, it is, in truth, the highest form of love you can show your desire. To discipline yourself is to say, this longing matters enough to me that I will give it the structure it needs to live. Discipline protects desire from dissolving into mere fantasy. It is the container that allows your energy to hold shape long enough to become real. There is an old story of a sculptor who was asked how he created such beautiful statues out of blocks of marble. He replied, "The figure was always there. I only removed the stone around it. Discipline works in the same way. Your desire holds within it the image of what you can become, but without discipline, it is buried beneath layers of distraction, weakness, and impulse. Discipline chisels away everything unnecessary until only the true form remains. At times, discipline feels like denial, but in reality, it is liberation. The athlete denies themselves certain comforts so they may taste the deeper freedom of mastery over their body. The student denies themselves the distraction of the moment so they may know the freedom of wisdom and insight. The artist denies themselves laziness so they may stand before their own completed creation and know the joy of having brought something into being. The truth is, discipline is not the enemy of desire. It is its guardian. Without it, desire destroys itself in endless craving, never satisfied. With it, desire transforms into strength, direction, and purpose. Discipline channels the wild energy of longing into a force so concentrated, so unshakable, that it can move mountains. So the question we must face is this: where are we scattering our energy? Where are we chasing too many things too quickly without depth? And where must we gather ourselves, focus, and commit? For it is in answering this question that restless longing ceases to torment us and begins instead to empower us. The path of discipline is not easy, but it is the only path that makes desire worthy of the greatness it promises. And once you taste the power of desire shaped by discipline, you will never again confuse fleeting cravings with true longing. You will know the difference between scattered energy and focused fire. And you will discover within yourself a force that does not merely want, but that creates, achieves, and transforms. If desire remains turned inward, if it serves only the ego, your comfort, your pleasure, your gain, your recognition, then it will inevitably collapse under its own weight. It becomes shallow, unsustainable, a hunger that never finds satisfaction. Such desire, no matter how brightly it burns at the start, eventually consumes itself, leaving only ashes of disappointment and emptiness. But when desire is tied to something larger than yourself, when it is anchored to a vision beyond your private gratification, it becomes unbreakable. It takes on a life of its own, stronger than your moments of weakness, carrying you even when your own will begins to falter. History gives us endless examples of this truth. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., whose desire was not confined to his personal freedom or comfort. His desire was for justice, dignity, and equality for millions of people who had been silenced and oppressed. That desire transcended the boundaries of self. It became a movement, a voice that could not be silenced, a fire that could not be extinguished even by violence, prison, or death itself. When desire is linked to service, it ceases to be fragile. It transforms into a legacy. Or consider the ambition of those who seek to alter the course of human history, like Elon Musk with his vision of humanity on Mars. Whatever opinion you may hold of him, there is no denying the sheer magnitude of his desire. It is not about the comfort of his own life, for he could have lived a quiet existence of luxury after his early successes. Instead, his desire expanded into a service to the future of humanity, a dream of making our species multi-planetary. Whether that dream succeeds or fails, the energy it provides is extraordinary. It is this alignment with something greater that fuels him to work at a pace where most would have burned out long ago. The truth is that when you serve only yourself, your energy is finite. You are driven by the fragile emotions of pride, greed, or vanity, and these forces are easily exhausted. But when your desire is tied to something larger, when you ask, How can my work lift others? How can my success give strength to those who have none? How can my life become a vessel for something greater than myself? Then your energy becomes infinite. Service expands desire into an inexhaustible source of strength. Consider the teacher who works long hours shaping the minds of children. Their salary may be small, their recognition minimal, yet they rise each morning with a sense of purpose. Why? Because their desire has shifted from personal gain to the service of young souls who carry the seeds of the future. This alignment gives meaning to their effort, even when fatigue sets in, even when the system seems to undervalue them. Their work is sustained by something beyond themselves, and so it does not wither easily. Or take the story of a nurse working through a global pandemic. The long shifts, the endless emergencies, the risk of her own health. Desire for comfort would have collapsed quickly under such pressure. But her deeper desire, the one that connected to service, kept her going. The desire to heal, to protect, to ease the suffering of strangers. When the self is no longer the only object of desire, resilience emerges. What once would have broken a person now becomes bearable, even purposeful. This is why the greatest strength of human beings does not emerge in pursuit of self alone, but in the willingness to serve. When we shift our desires outward, they cease to be temporary impulses and become lasting commitments. The parent who desires not just comfort for themselves, but a better life for their children, finds energy they did not know they possessed. The activist who longs not only for their own freedom, but for the liberation of their people, discovers courage that fear cannot extinguish. The artist who desires not only recognition, but to awaken something sacred in the hearts of others, creates work that resonates across generations. We must learn to ask deeper questions of our desires. If you desire wealth, ask yourself, what is this wealth for? How will it shape the lives of others? How will it become more than numbers in a bank account? If you desire recognition, ask, what will I do with this influence? How will it uplift voices that would otherwise remain unheard? If you desire success, ask, will my success open doors for others, or will it lock me in the prison of my own ego? When desire aligns with service, its meaning multiplies. Even in our own personal struggles, this truth becomes clear. When you face pain, fatigue, or despair, desire for the self alone often crumbles. But when you connect your effort to something beyond you, a child who needs your care, a community that depends on your contribution, a cause that gives you purpose, your ability to endure grows tenfold. Pain becomes more bearable, sacrifice more meaningful, and the journey itself more fulfilling. There is a profound psychological truth here. When we turn our desire outward, we transcend the narrow cage of the ego. The self, when isolated, is small, fragile, easily wounded. But the self connected to others, to service, to legacy, becomes vast. It participates in something eternal, something that outlives the fragile span of one human life. In this way, service becomes not just the expansion of desire, but also the expansion of the soul. Think of the difference between a flame and a wildfire. A single flame can warm you for a night, but it burns out quickly when it is left on its own. A wildfire, however, spreads far beyond its starting point, feeding itself through connection, unstoppable until it has transformed everything in its path. Desire for the self is like the single flame, temporary, flickering, easily extinguished. Desire connected to service is the wildfire. It spreads, it inspires, it endures. This is the invitation that life gives us, to take our private desires and expand them into something larger, something lasting. To seek not only personal comfort but the growth of others. to hunger not only for recognition but for impact, to long not only for survival but for contribution. This transformation of desire does not erase the self, it elevates it. It allows the self to participate in something timeless. And when we do this, we find a paradox. In giving our desire to something larger, we receive more than we ever imagined. The one who serves discovers fulfillment deeper than any pleasure of the ego. The one who sacrifices for others finds strength greater than any comfort of the self. The one who expands their desire into service discovers not emptiness but abundance, not weakness but power, not loss but legacy. Desire rarely travels alone. Wherever desire appears, frustration often follows, like a shadow that cannot be separated from the light. For the very act of wanting something greater creates a gap between what is and what could be. That gap is uncomfortable, it is painful, it presses against us like a weight we cannot shake, and yet that very weight is not a signal to stop, but a sign that we are alive, that we are reaching beyond the confines of what we have already known. Frustration is not a dead end. It is not a declaration of failure. It is raw, untamed fuel waiting to be ignited. Many people misinterpret this tension. When they feel the discomfort of not yet having what they long for, they say to themselves, "Perhaps this dream is not for me. Perhaps the universe is telling me to quit." They take the presence of resistance as proof that they are unworthy or that the path is closed. But life does not give its greatest treasures easily. The presence of frustration is not proof of impossibility. It is proof of importance. That burning ache in your chest, that restless dissatisfaction when you fall short, that deep pain when doors slam shut, that is not life mocking you. It is life asking you, how much does this truly matter to you? How willing are you to persist? Consider the story of J.K. Rowling. Before her name became a symbol of imagination and triumph, she was a struggling single mother, barely surviving on welfare, carrying her child while carrying also the weight of rejection after rejection. 12 publishers turned her away. 12 times she was told she was not good enough, that her work was not worth printing. Imagine the frustration she must have felt, sitting with a story she believed in, a world that lived within her, and yet no one willing to open the door. Many would have stopped there. Many would have said, "It's too painful. It's not meant for me," but she did not. She let her frustration sharpen her resolve. She turned rejection into a whetstone against which she refined her determination. And because she did not surrender, the story that once lived only in her imagination became one of the most beloved sagas in history, with over 500 million books sold, touching the hearts of generations. Frustration is the proof that you care. If you did not care, you would not hurt. You would not ache at rejection, nor mourn when your efforts fell short. Your frustration is your desire telling you, "This matters to me. This is not something I can simply walk away from." Too often, people numb this signal. They escape into distractions, bury their dreams under the safety of routine, and tell themselves it was foolish to care in the first place. But to deny frustration is to deny the very voice of your soul. Think of the inventor Thomas Edison. It is said he made over 1,000 unsuccessful attempts before finally perfecting the light bulb. 1,000 failures, 1,000 frustrations, and yet he famously remarked, "I have not failed. I have simply found 1,000 ways that do not work." To most, frustration is a wall. To those who understand, it is a door disguised as stone. You must push long enough to realize that it opens. The same pattern plays out in the ordinary struggles of daily life. The student who studies diligently yet falls short on exams. The entrepreneur who pours heart and savings into a business that stumbles again and again. The artist whose work goes unnoticed in a world that seems indifferent. All of them meet frustration at every turn. The temptation is always the same, to take frustration as a verdict against one's worth. But if they can shift their perspective, if they can see frustration not as a stop sign, but as fuel, they discover an inner strength they did not know they possessed. Frustration carries an alchemical power. It can transform despair into drive, rejection into resilience, failure into focus. But this transformation does not happen by itself. It requires choice. You must choose to lean into the discomfort, to let it burn, and then to use that burning as energy for the next step. Just as muscles grow not in comfort, but in resistance, your spirit grows in the very moments when frustration tempts you to quit. There is a deep psychological truth here. Frustration is the confrontation between your current self and your potential self. It is the meeting point between who you are and who you could be. The pain comes because those two selves are not yet aligned. To numb the frustration is to accept the smaller self. To embrace it, to work with it, is to move toward the larger one. Think of a seed. Buried in the dark soil, it is pressed from all sides. That pressure could be interpreted as suffocation, as an ending. But the seed uses that very pressure to break open, to push roots downward and shoots upward. The soil resists, but the resistance itself is what gives the seed direction and strength. Your frustration is no different. It is the soil pressing against your desire, and it is asking you, will you break open or will you decay? We must stop interpreting frustration as punishment and start seeing it as guidance. Each time you feel that sharp sting of wanting but not yet having, let it remind you, here lies something worth fighting for. If it did not matter, it would not hurt. If it did not belong to your destiny, it would not return to you again and again, even after failures. There is a story of a man who trained for years to run a marathon. On his first attempt, he collapsed halfway, overcome by exhaustion. Frustration nearly broke him, but instead of walking away, he used that frustration to analyze, to learn, to grow stronger. On his second attempt, he made it further, though still not to the end. Again, frustration burned, yet he chose to let it fuel him. By the third attempt, he crossed the finish line. The joy was not only in the victory, but in the memory of all the frustration that had carved him into someone capable of enduring it. Life does not hand us our deepest desires without asking us to prove our devotion to them. Frustration is the test. It asks, will you settle for less, or will you let this fire refine you? And in how you answer, your destiny is shaped. So, when frustration grips you, do not turn away. Do not silence it with excuses or bury it under distractions. Let it speak. Let it remind you that you are alive, that you care, that something inside you is worth the struggle. Then take that fire and keep moving, for frustration, when reframed, is not your enemy. It is your desire transformed into fuel, guiding you ever closer to the life you were meant to live. Desire is the beginning of all human striving, but left to itself, it is fleeting, restless, and easily consumed by the fire of the moment. Impulse is desire untethered, a sudden rush that demands immediate gratification, no matter the cost or consequence. It shouts, I want it now, but offers no direction, no patience, no endurance. Vision, however, is desire transfigured. Vision takes the same spark and turns it into a steady flame that can guide a life through storms, through darkness, through decades. Impulse exhausts itself in seconds, but vision sustains itself across a lifetime. The difference between those who scatter their energies and those who shape history lies in this anchoring. Whether desire is enslaved by impulse or disciplined by vision. Think of how impulse manifests in everyday life. A person feels the hunger for recognition and scrolls endlessly through their phone, craving likes and validation that vanish within moments. Another feels the hunger for wealth and wastes their energy chasing quick schemes, only to be left emptier than before. These are fireworks, bright, noisy, but gone before you can even catch your breath. Contrast this with one who has a vision. The hunger for recognition becomes the vision of creating something meaningful, something that will outlast them. The hunger for wealth becomes the vision of building not only prosperity, but a foundation upon which others can stand. This is not a firework. It is a torch, steady and illuminating, capable of lighting the way for others long after the one holding it has passed. The life of Nelson Mandela is one of the most luminous examples. His desire for freedom was not merely the impulse of a man who wished to escape his own suffering. He could have been consumed by the bitterness of the bars that held him for 27 years. He could have allowed impulse to turn that desire into rage, into vengeance, into despair. But he anchored his desire into a vision far greater than himself, a vision of a free South Africa where his people could walk in dignity. That vision turned his prison cell into a place of preparation rather than defeat. It transformed time into an ally rather than an enemy. And when he emerged, he carried not only his own liberation, but the liberation of a nation. His life proves that desire without vision is fragile, but desire anchored in vision can outlast even iron bars. To anchor desire in vision requires a deliberate act. It is not enough to simply feel the longing. You must ask it to serve something greater. You must speak it, write it, shape it into a picture so clear that even in moments of weakness it reminds you of where you are going. Without this anchoring, desire becomes a restless craving, a constant agitation that pulls you in 1,000 directions. One day you chase this, the next day that, until life feels like a series of false starts. But with vision, every act of discipline, every sacrifice, every frustration finds meaning. Vision takes the sting of delay and transforms it into patience. It takes the weight of obstacles and transforms it into strength. We must remember that vision is not born in comfort. It is born in the wilderness of waiting. The impatient mind rebels against it, for vision demands endurance. Impulse seeks the short road, but vision embraces the long one. Impulse clings to immediate relief, but vision leans into delayed fulfillment, knowing that what is being built in the unseen will one day appear in the visible. To anchor desire in vision is to trust the slow work of destiny. It is to believe that even if the fruit is far, the roots must still be planted deeply. This is why so many people feel empty even when they achieve what they thought they wanted. They won the impulse, but they lost the vision. They got the job, the purchase, the thrill, the applause, but it vanished quickly, leaving them thirstier than before. Impulse consumes but does not satisfy. Vision, however, nourishes. It feeds not only the present moment but also the future, giving every step meaning. Psychologically, we might say that impulse is tied to the ego, while vision is rooted in the self, the deeper, guiding principle of wholeness within us. The ego wants, grasps, fears, and resists delay. The self whispers of purpose, of destiny, of meaning beyond the fleeting moment. To anchor desire in vision is to listen not to the clamor of ego, but to the quiet guidance of the deeper self. And when you align with this, life ceases to be a series of random cravings and becomes a path unfolding towards something greater. You must ask yourself, what is my torch? What vision burns in me so deeply that I am willing to endure delay, rejection, hardship, even ridicule to see it realized? Write it down, speak it aloud, commit to it as though it were already a living reality. The act of naming and declaring your vision gives desire its direction, and when desire has direction, it no longer burns you with restlessness. It pulls you forward like gravity toward your destiny. There will be days when you falter, when the old impulses whisper to you that it would be easier to settle for the immediate, the comfortable, the easy win. In those moments, you must return to your vision. Remind yourself of why you began. Remind yourself that fleeting pleasure cannot compare to lasting fulfillment. Just as a river carves stone by persistence, not force, your vision will carve your life if you let it guide you long enough. Do not underestimate the power of a vision carried with consistency. Great buildings rise not because a single brick was laid in haste, but because brick upon brick was set with intention, even when the progress seemed invisible. Great lives are no different. Your vision is the blueprint. Your desire is the energy. Your discipline is the labor. When aligned, they make the impossible possible. So let your impulses come, but do not let them rule. Notice them, acknowledge them, but then anchor them to the greater vision you have chosen. For in the end, life will not reward you for what you wanted in fleeting moments. It will reveal who you became because of what you endured and built with vision. Desire is the spark, but only vision can make it a torch that lights your path and guides others long after your footsteps fade. Desire is not your enemy. It is your energy, your spark, your beginning. But only you decide what it becomes. Left untamed, it can enslave you. Transformed, it can make you unstoppable. So, take your desires, discipline them, expand them beyond yourself, fuel them with frustration, and anchor them in vision. Then you will discover that desire is not weakness. It is the very fire that forges power, meaning, and destiny.